Okay, welcome to Mr. Burley Teaches, a series of lectures for the AP Environmental Science classroom. Today's lecture is an introduction to soils. We're going to talk a lot about soils in a food and agriculture unit. I'm going to introduce a couple of these topics here to some of the concepts we're going to be using throughout the year. Alright, hopefully this mini lecture, will give you an appreciation for soil. Okay, we have such a negative outlook about soil. We call it dirt. We say we're dirty. I'm not saying we shouldn't clean ourselves at the end of the night or even in the morning, but when we get dirty, it typically has a negative connotation. But soil is so integral in our lives. We rely on it every day, all right, especially in the foods that we eat and consume, because those minerals and vitamins need to be in the soils in order for plants to consume them, so that we can later get them through the plants. All right, soils are an integral part of our lives. So let's start looking into soils. Okay, we all have some story about soil, all right, whether it be a negative story or a positive story. Some of us have many of both. So we all have experience with soil in some way. From this day on, when we talk about soil, I want you to use that word, soil. Okay, get the word dirt out of your mind. It's almost a disrespectful term to call soils dirt. Okay, so in class, when you're having discussions and when you're reading, all right, you'll never see the word dirt. So let's not use that. Let's say soil. All right, it's a little bit more accurate, a little bit more respectful for the concept. So let's start here. Soil provides what we call ecological services. All right, very important term and concept, ecological services. And what that means is that soil provides the world, the earth, humans, services. It provides them services via the environment. All right, so for example, soil provides us with nutrient value in our foods. It's a service it provides us. It provides us with cleaning groundwater. All right, you're going to see in a couple moments that soil actually cleans the groundwater for us. So if there's a spill of some sort, or if there's human waste or sewage or effluent, the soil will naturally clean that for us. All right, which helps with plant and animal health. Okay, so soil provides those services for us. We call those ecological services. So hopefully you're starting to gain an appreciation already for what soil does for us on a daily basis. All right, soil is a renewable resource. It rebuilds itself. Over time, soil is created. Okay, it's a renewable resource. Other renewable resources are like solar energy, all right, wind. Those are other renewable resources. They are always present. Soil is always forming. Okay, but we have to be careful, because the quality and quantity of soils isn't always a given. Humans use fertilizers, we use pesticides, we irrigate the land, we till it, all right, we plow it up, and all those practices deteriorate the quality and quantity of soils. So we have to learn to take care of our soils and treat it like a resource rather than an object. Okay, let's think about soil as a resource. All right, so I said it's renewable, but the catch-22 is that it takes hundreds of years for soils to mature. Okay, so if we're losing soil currently, let's say we're losing quality and quantity of soil, it takes a long time for soils to replenish themselves. Yes, they are renewable, but that process takes a long time. You can argue that you can build soil in a compost heap very quickly over only a couple of years, and that's true. But at the rate at what we're losing and polluting soils, the little bit of compost that you can create by no means matches what we lose. All right, so we're talking more of on a large scale here, that it takes soil hundreds, if not thousands of years to mature. All right, and this picture goes from left to right. You have rock that's been exposed to the surface. It takes time for that rock to weather in place or be eroded, and organic matter to take hold, and then that organic matter to break up those rocks and take in those minerals, and then for soils to mature. Okay, it takes a long time. So continue to gain a respect for healthy, nutrient-rich soils. All right, here's a slide here, and let's read it together. Consider that there's only 12 million square miles of arable land on Earth. Okay, arable land, that soil that we can grow food in, that's valuable. All right, arable land is being lost at a rate of 38,000 square miles per year. So let's look a little bit in the history, the present, and the future. In 1959, there was 12 acres per person. All right, and there was about 3 billion people at that time. 12 acres per person to grow food and to use for sustenance. 2006, we were already down to 1 acre of arable land per person at around 7 billion people on the planet. As population continues to grow and as more and more people become affluent enough to have more food, what's going to be in the future? By 2039, it's predicted that only around about a half an acre of arable land will be per person. Will our population be sustainable? All right, when it comes to the amount of arable land we have. So we don't know. Please gain an appreciation for soil. All right, its quality and its quantity. And that's what we're doing here today. That's why you're listening to this lecture. All right, we're gaining an appreciation for a component in our environment. Okay, so I don't want you to go out and jump in the soil. I don't want you to rub around in it. Okay, at this point, you've already started to internalize this stuff. Maybe you're already starting to fall in love with finding this new appreciation for soil. Okay, but let's dive in a little bit more. Not literally dive in, but let's look at this a little bit more at some of these concepts and learn more about soil. You drive down the roads on a daily basis. You walk down sidewalks and they're cracked. Okay, some of those cracks you can attribute to poor planning on the soil scientist's or the engineer's perspective. All right, when we engineer roads and houses and buildings, we have to know all about the soil that we're placing these things on. All right, because some soils swell when they absorb water, they'll shrink. All right, when they absorb water, they'll swell, and when they dry, they'll shrink. So if we put a road surface or a house on top of soils that are swelling and shrinking, that's when our cracks form, a crack in the foundation, or a crack in the road. And then over the winter time, water will get into that crack, and when it freezes, it'll open that crack a little bit more, and the freeze-thaw process will take those started cracks and make them bigger. All right, here's a picture of a crack in the sidewalk. All right, it costs money to repair those. It costs time and effort and energy and money. So we need to plan accordingly and learn and know about soils. All right. Engineers who are engineering drain fields for private septic systems. All right, if you live in a house and you have a private septic system on your property, this is what it looks like. All right, and I'm not talking about some of you live in town and your sewage goes into the sewer system. This is at a house where you flush the toilet, your waste will go immediately into a septic tank. And there's a bit of cleaning and separating that goes on in there, and then your waste will then go into a drain field, all right, which is a series of pipes with holes in them, where that sewage will drain and percolate through the soil. All right, and here's where that ecological service comes into play. While your effluent is passing through the soil will clean the water. All right, so underneath your drain field, the soil and the bacteria inside of it is cleaning our wastewater for us and putting it back into the groundwater system. All right, so we need to know about these soils in here, because if the effluent passes through the soil too fast, then our waste is getting into the groundwater. All right, if it's not percolating enough, your sewage will build up, and now you have sewage out on the surface, and nobody wants that either. Okay, so you need the effluent, your sewage, to pass through the soil at the correct rate so that the soil can do its job and clean. So we need to know the properties. We need to know the permeability and the porosity of these soils. Okay, so here's what it might look like. All right, we need to know the sediment size. If your soil is too sandy, water and effluent and sewage will pass through too quick. If your soils are too clay rich, it might build up and it's not permeable enough. You need just the right soils so that effluent and wastewater passes through at just the right rate. And in Pennsylvania, when they're designing drain fields, the percolation rate is somewhere, let me lock this up. The percolation rate is supposed to be somewhere between 6 and 90 minutes per inch. That will be sufficient to clean the groundwater before it goes back into the environment. And that's up to Pennsylvania code. Here's a picture of where sewage actually wasn't filtering fast enough, and now it's on the surface, and now those people have to excavate, and they have a problem because they're going to have to remove the soil and rebuild their drain field and then start over, and that's very costly. Here's a picture of the drain field. All right, this is what's in your yard if you have this type of system. And we're going to go through the components of this and the actual bacteria and what's going on inside the tank later when we talk about wastewater. I'm just introducing soils at this point. All right. If you're a farmer or an agronomer, you need to know about soils. If you're growing plants, even if you yourself are just having a garden, you need to know about the porosity, the permeability, the texture, the sediment sizes, because some plants need soils that dry out very quickly, like corn. Corn needs water, but it wants its soil to dry out. That's the type of soil corn will thrive in. Other plants, like the spinach leaf or lettuce, they like moist soils. All right, so you can see this soil here is holding the water. It's not allowing the water to filter through too fast. So farmers, obviously, and that shouldn't be a surprise, need to know about soil quality. All right, you might be an engineer in charge of building a reservoir or a pond, all right, whether it be at a residential or a commercial scale. Okay, we have a retention pond here at school, Lake Verano. All right, when you're engineering those ponds or those reservoirs, you need to know the soil type. All right, so if you're a geologist and engineer, you'll come out and assess the site, and you might have to lay down a layer of clay because you don't want the water in the pond to seep right through the bottom, and then you have no pond. Okay, so you need clay, a type of soil that doesn't allow water to percolate through, and therefore you have an impermeable boundary to line your pond with. All right, it might be too costly to put a liner down, a plastic liner, so you have to use the soil. You have to know a lot about the soil. Right? So there's a lot of people out there that need to know about soil quality and soil properties. So soil science, in short, is called pedology, and engineers, farmers, all kinds of occupations need to know about the physical properties, the chemical properties, the biology, the fertility properties, and how to manage soils. All right, and we're working with a branch of science called pedology. I was an archaeologist for 5 years, and we worked every day in the soil. I loved it. It was beautiful. Okay, gaining appreciation. Okay, so let's start diving in, not literally, but let's start looking at soil and the properties of the soil. Let's start here with what soil is made of. All right, if you look underground, if you could see the subsurface of an average sample of soil, okay, not taking it out of the ground, but looking at it in profile, you would notice that an average soil sample consists of 50% air and water. And if you're taking notes, a nice pie chart shows this pretty well. All right, 25% airspace, 25% water, and that would make up 50% of an average sample of soil. Now, you need airspace within soil. In a soil, that's the airspace is where water can fill. All right, so you need water to get down through the layers of soil. All right, if there's no airspace, like in a clay-rich soil, less water is going to get down there. Okay, but you also need airspace for roots to grow. Okay, and I'll draw my surface, and let's draw a plant. Okay, we have two different soils. We have a soil over here with very little airspace, and the roots cannot grow. All right, they're very struggling to grow. There's no airspace for those roots to fill. But the plant on the right, in that soil, the airspace is high. There's 25% airspace, and those roots can really grow down and access much more water and more nutrients, and it's going to reflect in the plant. Okay, so airspace is very important when it comes to soil quality. So that's 50% of the soil on average. The other 50%, 45% is minerals. All right, those are the minerals that we need plants to take in so that we can then get those minerals from the plants. So think about eating a salad. All right, what kind of minerals and vitamins are you getting from eating a salad? Or a big hint would be banana. Okay, what's the mineral that a banana would provide you? All right, so you have potassium. All right, the body needs phosphorus. We need iron. There's so many vitamins and minerals, and those need to be present in the soil, or it's a poor quality soil, which is going to result in a poor quality food. So minerals are a very important component of soil. So that's 95% of an average sample of soil. The other 5% are your organics. Okay, and those organics could be the organisms that we need to break things down, to make more soil, to put the nutrients into the soil. All right, it could be the roots, It could be decaying leaves, it's called humus, decaying leaves and sticks and organic matter. Okay, so that 5% of organic material is extremely important because that's what's going to provide the soil with essential vitamins and nutrients and replenish the soil itself. So an average soil sample will have those things, and depending on your soils, those numbers will change. Okay, but that's a good way to present the contents of soil. Moving right along. Another property of soil are the sediment sizes themselves. What makes up the soil? The sediment sizes. The ones that we care about are gravel, sand, silt, and clay. Okay, these are the main soil sizes. All right, and you have a little scale in millimeters. All right, so gravel are your biggest components, your biggest particle, soil particle. All right, and then sand would be the next smallest. Silt is very, very small, and clay is invisible at this scale. Okay, clay acts like a little plate, where silt acts like a little ball, sand acts like a little ball, and gravel can be any shape or size. All right, it's just big stuff. Okay, so now in my little scale here that I'm drawing, you could see if I stacked gravel together. All right, let's put a pile of gravel on the page here. All right, and let's put a pile of sand on the page. All right, and then let's put silt. All right, and then let's put a layer of clay. All right, this is a nice little exercise to show the point here. So now when I change to blue and I drip water on these samples, okay, we're going to drip water on each of these samples. The sediment sizes will determine how fast and how much water can get through the sample. All right, if we drop water through our gravel sample, look at all the air and space in between the particles. All right, lots of air space. All right, we call this porosity, the pore space. Lots of air space that the water can fill when you have gravel. All right, and then we drop water on our sand sample. All right, not as much, it's there. Okay, there's airspace in between the sand, but the way the sand particles, because they're round and they're next to each other, there's airspace and the water can get through. But now let's get down to our smaller size sediments. Silt, it will take longer for that water to seep through. Okay, it needs to find the few spaces in there to percolate through or to infiltrate. All right, it can get through, but it's going to take longer. All right, for that water to percolate through. And I'll do this. And then think about clay. All right, at the invisible scale, a soil particle that acts like a plate, the water is going to fall down and it might find some airspace. But clay can act as an impermeable surface. All right, so if you have straight clay soil, water is going to pool up at the top and you're going to have flood events or standing water. All right, if you have standing water after rain in your yard, after a rain, there's probably a high amount of clay in your soil or silt. Okay, it takes a long time for water to percolate or infiltrate those soils. Okay, and I have a little video to show the sediment sizes and how they settle out in water. All right, and it's shown here in this little jar. The gravel is the biggest and the heaviest. The sand is the next heaviest. Silt is lighter, and then the fine clay is lighter yet. And if you think about a flood event, it's going to be the gravel that's going to settle out first. The sand will settle out second, and the silt and the clay can be transported for very far distances, and it can take a long, long time for those things to settle out. I have a little video here that I made, and I'm going to use my handy dandy tube of soil science to show you a visual of this concept. All right. Okay, so now that we've seen sediment size, all right, let's talk about what we call that. We call that the soil texture. And you may have already, if not, we will obtain a soil sample. Okay, and then we're going to test it in a lab. We're going to take your soil sample and we're going to investigate the proportion of sand, silt, and clay in your soil sample. Okay, and that's called soil texture. What's the proportion of sand, silt, and clay in your soil? All right, and knowing the soil texture will help determine how fast water can be absorbed. All right, and we call it infiltration. How fast can water infiltrate that soil, and then how fast can it percolate down through those soils. So if you have a larger sediment, we've already talked about this in the last slide, sand will percolate and infiltrate very quickly. All right. If you have a high percentage of clay or silt, it's not going to infiltrate or percolate very quickly. All right, so we'll look at this in the lab, the soil texture. Taking a look here, soil porosity goes along with the texture. Okay, so depending on the sand, silt, and clay in your soil, water can seep right down through very quickly, infiltrate, and percolate through that soil. If your soil is very clay rich, it'll take a while, if at all. Okay, so depending on the sand, silt, and clay, we can determine the porosity. And we'll also test that in the lab. Okay, we're talking about the amount of pore space within a soil. Permeability is pretty much the same as porosity. The only difference is permeability describes the measure of time. Okay, it has everything to do with porosity. Depending on how much pore space, it'll be shorter time or a longer time that it takes water to infiltrate through the soil. And these are all dependent upon the soil textures, the sizes. So hopefully you're getting this. Okay, gain an appreciation for soil. Look at it in a different way. It's not dirt. Okay, we need to really internalize the quality of our soil and what it's telling us. Okay, so the little thing down there at the bottom there, the little image I have here, shows you what I just went over. All right, gravel, water is going to permeate through gravel very quickly. Sand a little bit slower, but very quickly. Silt a little bit slower. And then clay, it might take years in some cases. Okay, a pond, a lake. Okay, my story here with the porosity and permeability and the texture of soils here. My wife grew up in the Pine Barrens, and if you've ever been to the New Jersey Pine Barrens, it's a huge region of area where it's very sandy soil. It's just a bit inland in the New Jersey, central and southern New Jersey, and very, very sandy soils. Okay, so water permeates through it very easily, and the soils then dry out pretty quickly. Okay, ask me in class about my Jersey Devil story. I like telling that story. Nevertheless, when you hike into the Jersey Pine Barrens, you'll very quickly see there's only a few species that are growing here of pine trees. All right, and it's all it all comes down to the soil. The white pine tree likes sandy, well-drained soils that dry out very quickly. The pine needles provide acid to the soil, which other species will like that too. So the Pine Barrens, a gigantic region in New Jersey, is the way it is because of the soils that are there. The species that are in an environment are dependent upon the soils, the species of plants, which those species of plants will bring in animals, certain insects, certain animals. So an entire ecosystem really starts with the soil. Okay, take a look at this picture here. This is a construction site where I'm going to point a couple things out here and watch my blue marker. Okay, so you see right here where this telephone pole has been worked around. All right, so you see the surface of the soil. Then you see a layer change here. All right, we're going to call this T for topsoil. All right, and this yellow layer right here we're going to call S for subsoil. All right, in any construction site, the engineers will take the topsoil away. They will literally strip the land of the topsoil. Okay, and the reason is because if you build a building on that topsoil, the topsoil has a tendency to swell and shrink or move or sink. And if you build a building, think about our school. If you put a school on the topsoil and it shrinks or swells, there's going to be cracks in the foundation. You're going to have big problems. All right, you're going to have subsidence where it just sinks in certain places. Big problems. So what they'll do is they'll take the topsoil away and build our buildings and our homes and our roads on the subsoil, which is usually clay rich. All right, not much organic material. You might even get into the bedrock in the subsoil. So it's more stable to build a building or a structure on the subsoil. And you see here, after the rain, that subsoil being clay-rich doesn't allow the water to percolate through. All right, so you have a lot of standing water and possibly even flood events depending on the grade of the land. All right, now that topsoil, that's where all the organic stuff is. All right, this is where the plants grow and their roots come down in here and provide the soil, and the leaves that decay provide the topsoil with minerals and nutrients. All right, the subsoil is usually devoid of minerals and nutrients. All right, and not too many roots get down that far. All right, so the topsoil is very valuable. So engineers and construction companies and contractors will sell that topsoil and get it back out there to the people who can use it. This is very clay-rich soil. If a farmer is trying to farm on clay-rich soil, you see these cracks. Okay, if it is wet and it dries out, it'll actually crack. All right, you'll see desiccation cracks, or what's called mud cracks. All right, and if you're trying to farm on land with poor quality soils or clay-rich soils, you'll find these mud cracks, and the plants aren't getting the water they need because water cannot percolate down through those clays. Okay, so what we're going to do, if you're in my APES class, you're going to go out into the Seek Center and obtain a soil sample for us. We're going to analyze that in the lab. All right, if you're in any of my other classes, or even if you are an APE and you were absent one day, what we're going to do is we're going to obtain a soil sample somewhere in the district. Okay, I'm going to ask you to take something from your yard or from somewhere nearby your house, or even just a park that you can go and access. All right, so we're going to take a look at some soils around Seek and around this area and determine the soil texture and the permeability, or the porosity. But before you go out into nature, there's one more concept we need to talk about, something called soil horizons. Horizon is a line. Okay, if you look at the horizon this morning, you might have saw the sunrise. All right, so the horizon is a straight flat line. What we're talking about with soil horizons is that line. Okay, where are the boundaries between one soil and the next? Okay, and here you have forgot one. Here you have these boundaries. All right, so here we go. This is very telling of what soil you're going to collect. All right, and I'll go through this. All right, the top layer of soil, which isn't very deep at all. All right, that top layer is extremely important. Okay, we call that the O horizon. All right, that O horizon is very organic rich. All right, that's where your leaf decay, your humus, your root mats. Okay, that's a very important layer because those organic rich substances are decaying right there on the surface, and that's going to provide the minerals and the nutrients to what we're going to call the A, or the topsoil. So if you don't have an O horizon, you don't have that decay, you don't have those minerals and nutrients, you don't have quality soils underneath the ground. All right, that O horizon is very important, and that's going to become the most rare form of soil. Okay, most of you are going to dig into the soil, and you're going to dig straight into the next layer, A. All right, unless you go into a forest and you see decay, you're in the A. The O horizon is it smells organic. I love that smell. It smells organic. You might even see things rotting. You might even get a nice big earthworm in there that's eating those leaves, and at the other end of the earthworm is O horizon soil coming out. The next horizon, which is a little thicker, all right, it's usually your tan soils. These are usually black or dark brown. Good stuff. Dark brown. All right, your A horizon is typically a brown layer, all right, a little thicker than the O, and it's commonly called topsoil. All right, in your yard, if you mow your lawn and you put a shovel into the ground, you're digging into the A. All right, and that's where all the minerals and the nutrients and the roots for plants are. They're pulling up the water, they're pulling up the nutrients in that A horizon. Very important. The next layer down is thick. Okay, that's a thick layer of usually yellow, all right, tannish. Sometimes it can be very, very orange. All right, we call that the B horizon. Put A. The B horizon, we also call it subsoil. All right, it's under the topsoil. All right, if roots get down through there, this is usually very clay rich. They won't go too far. All right, not too many minerals getting down in here, but they can. Okay, some nutrients, depending on the drainage properties of the soil, nutrients and minerals can get down into there. Deep-rooted plants will hook into the subsoil, but the subsoil is characterized by a mixture of A horizon nutrients and minerals and the C horizon, which is bedrock, which naturally breaks down, and those minerals of the natural breakdown of the bedrock will get into the B as well. So that's usually a mixture of A and B, or A and C horizon properties. And that could be a very, very thick layer. Under that, already mentioned, is the C layer. If you hit C layer, you're chopping into rock. All right, that is weathering in place. Okay, and it's becoming soil. So you can have soil formation from the top, and decomposition and worms and organic material breakdown, and you can have soil formation from the bottom. All right, and that bedrock weathering in place. Okay, and they call these the soil horizons. And I bring this up before I let you go and put a spade in the ground, because you're going to want to think about where's your sample coming from. If you get black, dark brown, organic smelling, rich stuff, you're probably in an O horizon. My favorite. All right, if you get something from your yard or from a park that's been mowed or a farm field, okay, you're in the topsoil. Right? You might go to a construction site and your soil is very, very, very orange and clay rich, and you're digging into the B. All right, so that's a little bit about the soil horizons. And those horizons, those thicknesses vary, and we need the O and the A to farm with and for our forest health. Okay, and we're losing those. That's where our soil loss is coming from. That's very easily eroded away, and then it's gone. Okay, if that O horizon is missing from an ecosystem, it takes a very long time for the plants and the organisms to return and come back and build that O layer again. And that's the most important one, because it provides the nutrients and vitamins we need. Okay, and that's a little bit about soil horizons. All right, so I'm going to skip ahead here, and I'll bring you to our school and the construction site that was our school. Okay, just to finish this Introduction to Soils lecture, I'll take you to our school, and it was a construction site. There was a forest here at one time. All right, think about this. Before our school was here, there was a forest. There was actually a forest, and then a farm, and then our school. When the forest was here, there was soils rich with A and O horizon. As the leaves fell, they decayed and decomposed in place, building that organic rich humus layer, seeding the A horizon with vitamins and minerals. All right, the forest ecosystem thrived here up on top of the hill. And then when this became a farm, the trees were chopped down, and the O horizon was tilled and plowed underground, and the O and the A mixed and provided a rich farmland. Good food was grown in this soil here because that O and A mixture provided all the nutrients that the farmer needed to grow really good quality food with. But when we built this building, the excavators and the engineers took that A horizon away and built our school, which is what you need to do to have a nice stable structure. Okay, if you build on the B horizon and you compact it and you layer it with clay, your building is safe from any subsidence or any shifting of any soils or anything like that. All right, but they took the A away, and when we planted our grass seed and we planted our trees and bushes and shrubs on what was left, the B horizon, which is devoid of nutrients, water cannot get down through the soil. It's clay rich and compact. When we try and plant a beautiful magnolia tree on the property, the tree doesn't grow right. All right, we look at our foliage and our plants at campus and we feel sad. We feel sorry for the magnolia tree, which should be beautiful and full and flowering, and it isn't. All right, and it's all due to the soil that it was planted in. Okay, so take a look at our school plants next time you're at school, and realize that the soil quality is not there. All right, and what should be a nice, full, and big tree, if you look at the trunk there, that tree is a 10-year-old tree by now. All right, 8 to 10 years old. It should be a lot bigger than that and fuller and doing better. So, hopefully through this lecture you gained an appreciation for soil and you're revved and pumped up and ready to go and obtain a sample and bring back to the lab and look at the soil quality and investigate the texture, the percentage of sand, silt, and clay, and measure the permeability of your soil sample and start applying some of these concepts. If you have any questions, please feel free to write them down or come into school and ask them. All right, be safe when you go out and get your soil sample. All right, and hopefully you're smiling and grinning and giddy with excitement to learn a little bit more about soils and apply these concepts. Thanks, and I'll see you back here next time for our next lecture in these series of lectures for the AP Environmental Science classroom.